resolve the issue, we will be proceeding momentarily with the commencement of the hearing. Sophia Ruddock? Okay, Mr. Danny Bellissimo.
I'm here.
Okay, so Mr. Danny Bellissimo and Sophia Ruddock, we're about to start the hearing. YouTube is good to go. So Michael will start shortly. And just so keep your videos feeds on for now. Thank you.
Thanks.
We're just going to start with the opening remarks. Good morning. During the declared emergency, Committee of Adjustment virtual public hearings are being conducted by electronic means through WebEx, an online digital platform, and streamed on the Toronto City Planning YouTube channel, which we've finally been able to connect to, and we apologize for the delay this morning. These measures are necessary to comply with physical distancing requirements and a provincial order that limits attendance at public gatherings. This will be a virtual public hearing, and participants who have registered in advance will be able to make their presentations to the committee using WebEx, an online event that is being moderated by city staff. Anyone wishing to view the hearing may do so by watching on YouTube. Participants who have registered in advance will be connecting either by their computer, a phone or tablet app, or by telephone. All participants will automatically be muted on entry, and when your item is called, each participant will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. Only the committee members will be participating by video. Any registered participants will be participating by audio only. We ask that you mute your devices until you are called on to speak. Land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. In accordance with Sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act 1990 as amended, this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Toronto is called to order. The Committee of Adjustment considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning bylaw that apply to the property, permissions to extend or alter lawful non-conforming uses, and consents to sever properties to create new lots. Anyone who wishes to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on an application must submit a written request for a decision by email. Please ensure that you include your name, address, and email address, because Committee of Adjustment and the TLAB will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email. If you do not agree with the decision of the committee rendered here this morning, decisions may be appealed to the Toronto Local Appeal Body, TLAB, or in some limited circumstances to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, LPAT. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision of the committee. The hearing procedure will be as follows. We'll actually go in order. We don't vet the agenda as we do in a non-virtual context. So we'll go in order, and we will deal with deferral requests as we go through the agenda, similarly, rather than vetted in advance. In making your submissions, where an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant may proceed with their presentation if desired. Where the committee does not require presentation, applicants are to advise the chair should they wish to speak to the committee. The committee may ask questions and or take the matter into the committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the applicant or agent, will be getting a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee, and I guess someone will comment watching the clock when you're approaching the 5-minute mark. The applicant or agent will proceed first, make a presentation to the committee of the application. Please note that the committee may not entertain revisions to proposals at the hearing today. The committee may decide to defer the application if it's being substantially revised in order to ensure that the revised application is both accurate and that all those entitled to notice of the application are informed of the changes. Then individuals either in support or opposed to the application will be invited to speak. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker after they finish their presentation, and when all speakers are finished, the applicant or agent is given an opportunity to rebut only those issues that were raised by the speakers, not to introduce new evidence or new materials, but just to respond to those issues that have been raised. That will mark the end of the discussion, and the committee is then taken into the application is then taken into committee for a decision. Members participating today, virtually, are Sophia Ruddock and Danny Bellissimo, and in person, Don Taylor and myself, Michael Clark. Some preliminary matters: confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting. I think that was December the 6th, December the 3rd. Okay. Can I have a motion, please, to approve those minutes?
I'll move approval of those minutes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Seconder for that. You may not have been present, but we need a seconder to.
I will second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Bellissimo. All in favor? Minutes are approved. Closing files, I believe, Mr. Secretary Treasurer, acting. We have, I believe, 2 files to be closed, 811 Evans and 145 Evans. And I believe both of those items, no work was done, so those items are to be closed with a full refund other than the amount that is normally deducted.
In accordance with the city refund policy.
Okay. So can I have a motion first for 811 Evans?
Mr. Chair, I'll move closure of 811 Evans with a refund subject to the City of Toronto refund policy.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Seconder for that.
Sophia.
Thank you, Sophia. All in
I'll second
favor? Okay, that file is closed. Next, 145 Evans, similarly.
Mr. Chair, I'll move closure of 145 Evans Avenue subject to, with a refund subject to the City of Toronto refund policy.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. Reddick. All in favor? That file is closed. And the last question is whether any of the members have any conflicts of interest to declare on the matters before us on this morning's agenda. No, none to declare. Okay, so then in that case, we can, I guess, get started with our first application, which is 138 Laurel Avenue. And this is an application to construct a new detached dwelling with an attached garage. And we have 7 variances. Transportation has no objection. And the applicant, yeah, there's a condition that one of 2 scenarios. Anyway, we'll hear about this more from the agent, Mr. Pasquale. This Pasquale. We have registered to speak on this matter. Oh, sorry.
It's Don Bennett.
Don Bennett, Mr.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think oh, okay.
Okay. So,
Mr. Bennett, welcome.
thank-
Could you please start
yeah,
off by stating
thank you
your
very
name and address for the record.
yeah. Yeah. Don Bennett, I'm the authorized agent. My address is 109 Ossington.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm here appealing to the committee to proceed with the application, which is consistent with past approval practice. I've provided analysis in order to support the minor variance. Feedback, it's been supported by staff, and I'm hoping to be granted the same consideration granted to similar applications along the streets and in that same neighborhood, homogeneous neighborhood.
Okay. Have you seen there's a comment from transportation continues to have concerns with the proposed circular driveway and the variances for front landscaping?
Correct.
There was some note that they wanted you to choose one of 2 scenarios.
Yeah, we will choose the first scenario, which is a minor shift of the driveway closer to the structure itself.
Okay, so they're going to shift the portion of the circular driveway in front of the dwelling that extends from the main driveway leading to the garage must be shifted closer to the dwelling such that it is located entirely within private property, and the applicant shall contact building division to confirm whether any additional variances will result. I guess hopefully not, because then you'd have to come back. The alternative was to
Well-
remove the circular portion of the driveway.
Yeah.
So you want to proceed with the first.
Yeah, we want to proceed with the first. And looking at it through the chair, in order to come to adhere to that minor change, it would need where we have, just one sec. We were requesting 70%, that would result in 67%.
So the variance changes?
It changes slightly. But it's in line with what has,
Okay, Chris, so can you
been-
advise which of the 7 variances is changing and how it's
Yeah.
changing for consideration? of
okay,
the committee?
yeah, so we're looking at variance 6. Okay, where the zoning requirement is 785, we were seeking 70%. We can accommodate that slight change on transportation by going to 67% instead of 70. And again, it's in line with, what has been granted in the past.
So instead of 70, a deficiency of 5%, you're going to be at 67, a deficiency of 8%.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct, Mr.
Can you
Chair.
advise how many square meters that is?
Ah,
68.24 at 70%. What is that amount at 67%?
okay,
Yeah, it's a greater variance. The problem with that, sir, is if it's greater, do we have a notification issue? So you're increasing variance number 6 in order to, I guess, do what transportation is one of the 2 options. But that creates
Correct.
increase. I don't know if it creates any additional variances, but it does
No.
increase variance number 6. And there's a problem with that because the community, not that it's a major change, technically would not have been advised of that. They would have read this notice and see 70% and not 67%. And although we
Correct.
realize that that's a really small amount and is being done to appease the transportation department, it creates a problem. Mr. Carvalino, what do you suggest in this matter?
The additional variance would require renotification. It is greater than what was
Yeah, it's not
circulated.
a new variance, but it's an increase of one of the variances.
Okay, understanding that through the chair, but
Can you
The
somehow
increase-
comply with these, with the 70%? Because otherwise it looks like you're gonna have to adjourn and come back. Or else take the other option and remove the circular driveway. So it's up to you which way you want to proceed.
hmm. So if I'm hearing correctly, the other issues would be dealt with, the other variances, with the exception of this one, item 6.
Sorry, what about item 6? Other than item 6?
No, yeah. So we requested originally 70%, but based on transportation input, we could get that done at, almost 68%, which is nominal compared to,
Yeah, I know. I agree. It's nominal,
yeah.
even 67% or 68%. It's compared to 70. If it's anything over, and the acting secretary treasurer will confirm that, then we have a notification issue.
okay. All right,
realize
so, Mr.
Really de minimis. It's really a small amount, and there's no neighbors who've weighed in with concerns, and it's unlikely if it was an extra 3% soft landscaping,
Right,
it would be a big hue and cry. But we do have a notification issue.
okay. So in terms of the 7 variants identified, the only thing that I'll be coming back to is item 6 in terms of notification.
No, the fresh notification would have to go out to the community, and you'd have to be put on another agenda. In order for it just to be that variance 6, well, you could get your approval today and then have to apply again for the extra 3%, which makes no sense. So it makes sense more to defer and then come back, even though it's
Okay.
a waste of time and there is some delay. But we really have to
Right.
move on this matter.
Okay, all right, so I guess we will defer and come back.
a quick question for you. Can you satisfy the transportation condition and provide the soft landscaped open space proposed in your application? Can you redesign the driveway to meet what has gone out in the circulation and satisfy the condition?
That's what I was asking.
Yes, it's probable. I'd have to go back to the architect. When we looked at it first, as I said, it resulted in approximately 68% and opposed to 70%. So
Okay,
in reworking,
it's 2 square meters
Oh.
between 5%. So if you go down 3%, we're talking like under 2 meters, 2 square meters. If you can provide
yes,
another,
right,
but so if you want, you can get your approval today and then try to fit in with the 70% that's been circulated.
Yeah.
If not, you have to come back. Maybe that's your best bet to see as
Uh,
I suggested and then Mr. Carvalino suggested, if you can try to reconfigure and still meet that 70% item matter
okay,
limit.
all right. So I think probably the easiest thing is to come back.
Okay.
All right, just so if we, I mean, the property owner, is eager to get this moving. So
Okay. Because the peril of having to do that, you'd have to pay another application fee, obviously, and then have to go through the whole process. So if you want to adjourn, even though if you could find another two square meters approximately, you wouldn't have to.
right,
If you want to come back, so in that case,
yeah.
I need a motion for deferral.
Just a question. I'm prepared to move, but seems to me one option might be, and I'm not really sure how the numbers spin out on this, but if you reduce in variance 1, if you eliminated that variance and went with a 6-meter wide driveway, I guess we can't deal with that right now because we don't know how the numbers spin. So I will move for deferral to enable the applicant to revise the
Okay, yeah,
variance
okay.
6.
No,
Sorry, he's in the
actually-
middle of a motion. Can we don't need anything more from you. Mr. Taylor is in the middle of making a motion.
So I'm moving for deferral to enable the applicant to revise variance 6 and to issue a proper, accurate, revised public notice.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Seconder for Mr. Taylor's motion.
Danny Bellissimo.
Thank you, Mr. Bellissimo. All in favor? Okay, the matter is deferred. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. We'll see you here again.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Item number 2 is 611 to 613 KEELE Street. It's an application to construct a new self-storage facility. And there are, on this application, I guess there's 5 variances. We have a covering letter, email correspondence. We have a transportation report from BA. Planning was looking for a deferral in order to defer until there's a final report expected in April 2021 of the KEELE St. Clair local study area, when that is further evolved. And we have a letter from the agent, Mr. Lance, which I believe, I don't know if all the members have seen this letter, dated January 18th, upon respectively requesting that the committee consider the application on its merits today, and not defer the application with reasons. Registered to speak on this, I guess, is Mr. Lance, and a neighbor at 603 Keele Street, Mr. Sang. So let's hear from Mr. Lance.
Everyone. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, and I'd like to start off by requesting that this committee not defer the hearing of this application on its merits, as requested by staff. As indicated by Mr. Carolino, we had provided a letter dated January 18th, which spells out a bit of the history of what's happened on this project from the beginning and the reasons why we oppose the adjournment. And
First
just
of all,
briefly,
Mr. Lance, can I just interrupt? Have all the members seen that
Sure.
letter? I was given a copy. Does everyone have a copy of that letter? The virtual members? We didn't get it to the commercial. So basically, so why don't you, yeah, I'm looking at this. It says, recognizing the local study area was commenced in October 2020, long after the site plan approval and minor variance application was filed and deemed complete. But basically, as you've read in the planning memo, they wish to have this deferred, but Mr. Lance gives through the history of the matter as set out in that letter. Perhaps, Mr. Lance, you want to just summarize your letter for the members who have not read a copy?
Absolutely, I'm happy to. Just very high level on the letter. We've been talking, we've been having good conversations with staff since 2018. So since 2018, we reached out to staff with the proposal for a self-storage development. It's an as permitted, as of right use on industrial lands. Our initial proposal was for 7 stories. We had good conversations with staff. We ended up settling with staff on the idea of coming in at 5 stories, which is what's before you today. That discussion commenced in 2018. They filed the site plan approval in 2019. We've been at this for 18 months. We filed the minor variance application in August of last year. 3 months after filing our minor variance application, only then do we hear in the comments from staff that there is a study being initiated. Now, it's fundamental that you don't change the rules in the middle of the game. Our application was filed relative to the policies, the official plan policies and the guidelines that are in place as of the date when we filed. And this study has only just started. The deferral request doesn't give us any date specific of when we're going to come back. And I'm sure all the members
mentioned April 2021, which seems a little unrealistic. And it says that's when it'll go to council. Doesn't mean that's what it's going to get.
Exactly. And I'm sure the members can appreciate the challenges for businesses right now. Our client, based on discussions with staff, purchased the site in 2019. And so at this late stage, to be proposing a deferral with no specific date when we come back, given the money and the time that's been spent on this application, it's just highly, highly prejudicial for our client. And I urge you not to defer this.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Lance? Okay, so on the matter,
I'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
Has the applicant been involved in the planning study at all? You have any input in this planning study? Is it open to public input?
Unfortunately, I don't know. There hasn't been any discussion about the study with our client. This came up literally at the 11th hour. The first I heard of it was when I read the staff report that came out from planning staff. And if I may add, it's interesting. We have been getting indications from staff that they're satisfied with the variances we're seeking. Transportation staff didn't raise any concerns. And planning staff had an opportunity to raise concerns with their application in their communication to the committee, and they don't raise any concerns. They just ask for a deferral. So
just to clarify, based on my question, far as you're aware, you're the owner of that property and the neighborhood has not had any request from planning to have input into the planning study.
That's correct. I'm not aware of any communication,
thank you.
invited or provided comment.
Okay, Mr. Lance, I'm just looking here at their letter when they talk about it's expected. It formally kicked off October 21st, not too long ago, in a virtual and public information section, it says, so I guess people had the right to participate. And it says, under the current timeline, a final report is expected to go to council on April. So that's no indication as to whether that's going to actually happen or whether they're going to be satisfied. But as you said, you submitted your application well before they even thought of doing this study.
Exactly, and it's interesting. The study, it's not even saying that there's bylaw changes coming or changes in guidelines. This is just a study. Our project has been assessed by staff relative to the in-force policies, zoning, and guidelines that are in place today, and no issues have been raised with it.
Okay, so committee members, I need a motion on the issue of whether we hear this today or whether it gets deferred as requested by planning. And I'm not sure when they want it deferred until, because until the KEELE St. Clair study is further evolved and more information is available on the public realm and build form direction. To me, that sounds a little on the vague side. And their expectation of the April date is just when it would go to council, but that's an expectation. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. This was written in January the 14th, so as of January 14th, this planning technician sort of advised of the target of April. So on the issue of whether we hear this today,
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm not desirous of holding this application up in light of an impending policy change and uncertain outcomes and dates. I think the agent and owner have been proceeding in good faith based on the current planning standards, and I find the variances to be in keeping with the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I move for approval.
okay, well, let's deal with this in 2 ways. Let's deal first with we're going to hear it today and hold the pending motion to approve the application until we've dealt with that. So can I get a seconder for Mr. Taylor's motion that we hear the application today and not defer? Someone prepared to second that motion? No? In that case, are you here? Can we just, you're hearing us? Mr. Bellissimo and Ms. Roddick? Can someone weigh in? Okay, so in that case, the motion fails. Do I have another motion?
I put in a motion to defer the application.
Okay, until when?
Danny Bellissimo seconds the
Hold on a
motion.
second, hold on a second. I can't go on. What is your, the deferred until when? Is it wording recommended by the planning department? There has to be some kind of a, Mr. Carvalino, some kind of a direction in terms of, you can't just defer this indefinitely, so it has to be deferred to some kind of a milestone.
Until the approval of the continuation from the planning department.
As the planning recommendation is identifying April, I would suggest deferring it till our first hearing in April, and then they can report back to the committee as to how far along that study is.
Okay. Ms. Reddick, are you able to hear Mr. Carvalino's suggestion?
I did, and I'm agreeable to that proposal.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Mr. Bellissimo, are you prepared to second that motion?
Yes, I second the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? And I will abstain to avoid a tie. By the way, just to advise committee members and I guess the general public, this committee will be going to 5 members effective our first hearing in February. So we will have an odd number of members, which is more appropriate in dealing with split decisions. So effective, we are no longer going to have 4 members, we will have 5, but the matter is then adjourned to, is it a specific date, the first hearing in April? And I guess we haven't heard we did have another speaker. Is there another speaker on this matter? Mr. Sang?
There is, Mr. Chairman. I can unmute Mr. Waiho Sang right now.
Okay, Mr. Sang, I'm sorry we forgot to get your position on the matter, not on the merits. We're not dealing on the merits of the application. We're dealing with the deferral, but the matter has been deferred. The applicant wanted to proceed, but I don't know what your position would have been, whether you wish to have it deferred or not, but it is being deferred.
Yes, can be
Mr. Sang, so
Yes.
you know what was your position on this matter? You were here to in support or with concerns or in opposition to the application?
It's in opposition, and I would support the deferral.
Okay, so it's been deferred, and you'll be re-notified, so you'll have a chance to weigh in when this matter comes back to the committee.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Committee.
thank you, sir. My apologies. Okay, Mr.
No
Lance,
worries. Have
so
a good day.
the application has been deferred.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I have Mr. Lance on mute. 1 second.
Okay, no, just
Okay, Mr. Lance has been unmuted.
Mr. Lance,
Oh, okay.
regrettably, as you may have heard, I assume you were muted and could hear in that the committee has chosen to, on a split decision, to defer the application as requested by city staff.
Okay, thank you for your consideration of this.
Thank you. We'll see you again. Item number 3 is 1880 the Queensway. This is an application to convert a portion of the existing building into an ophthalmic instrument sales service and optical manufacturing use. The variance is that this use is not a permitted use under the zoning bylaw. We have 1 variance. Accordingly, there's a cover letter, a previous decision, and CP has advised they have no objection, this being adjacent to their right-of-way. And registered to speak on this application is Amy Chung or David McKay of MHBC Planning. No
Yes,
other
Mr.
speakers?
Chair, good morning. Members
Morning.
of the committee. Can you hear me all right?
Yes. Can you state
Thank
your
you.
name for the record, please?
Yes, my name is David McKay. I'm a registered professional planner with MHBC, and I represent the applicant FEMA Development.
Okay, and we have your cover letter, and there isn't much, I don't believe we need a presentation. Is there anything you'd like to add before I ask committee members if they have any questions for you?
Simply, sir, that the home outfitters has been vacant since early 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Our client has tried to lease it to a variety of different retail users. Obviously, because of COVID and whatnot, and changing retail marketplaces, that's difficult. Hakeem Optical has come to the table. They have to relocate out of one of their other locations, and obviously the site-specific bylaw developed in the late 1990s was very specific in terms of the various uses. Obviously subject because of the history of commercial development around Sherway, and so specifically optical sales and the various assorted uses that we've requested are not within that very specific list. And so that's the request, the reason for the request. It will be a retail facility with those accessory uses, and we'll continue to support the planned function of this center as a retail commercial center. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McKay. Committee members, any questions for Mr. McKay, or is someone ready for a motion? And I don't believe there are any conditions being requested.
Danny Bellissimo would like to make a motion for approval of the variances. I find that the variances are minor in nature and a technicality in terms of the listing does not indicate the specific type of use.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bellissimo. Seconder for Mr. Bellissimo's motion.
Second that.
Thank you, Ms. Reddick. All in favor? Unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Mackay.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Okay, our next application is item number 4, 39 Montgomery Road. It's an application to construct a second-story addition above the existing dwelling, a new covered side porch, and a new covered rear deck. And we have before us in this application, there are 7 variances. We have revised plans and a waiver, and a report from planning requesting that variance 4 be reduced the building length slightly by half a meter from 18.5 requested to 18 meters. And it appears the applicant has consented to that, and that's why they've revised their plans to show that. We have as speakers Philip Gaspar or Richard Dobose.
It'll be Richard Dobos, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Richard Dobos will be speaking, as well as we have the neighbor at 69 Belvedere, either John Langhorn or Julie Gibson.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Richard Dobos from Gaspar Design Group, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant of 39 Montgomery Road.
Would you like to give us a brief presentation? Have you spoken to your neighbors?
During the COVID, we didn't receive any letters. We did check frequently to see any letters were presented. We did not speak because of the state of emergency right now to stay at home. We did not have any indication that there was any rebuttals going to be today.
Okay, and sir, the planning recommendation, it looks like it's pursuant to something that you and your client have agreed to, and you've actually changed the plans to reflect that. Is that correct?
Yes, we submitted plans already to make it 18 meters, and I hope that the committee already has the revised plans updated.
Yes. Okay, so let's go to the neighbor and see what their concerns are, if any, and you'll have a chance to respond.
Thank you.
Unless committee members have any questions of Mr. Dobose at this time. Mr. Taylor.
Yes, sir. I'm just wondering if your agreement to reduce the dwelling length by half a meter impacts variance 1, permitted lot coverage, and to what extent, if any?
Mr. Dobose?
Oh, yes. Sorry, that was...
Yeah, Mr. Taylor, just,
so
it's just a, very good question. Does your lot coverage go down as a result, or are you keeping that as a...
Of course, it would get reduced because we are reducing it to 18 meters. So number 1 would get reduced by a little bit because right now it stands at 83.3 and reducing the feet would bring it back just shy, maybe a 0.%. I would have to check the numbers in order to get that clarified, but it did reduce it.
Oh, you did reduce variance number 1 accordingly?
It's based on the numbers right now. This is the original 838.3, but it does get reduced, but it just wasn't altered through the architect.
Again, that seems like a sort of compared to, a higher number. If that number can be brought down and should be brought down, perhaps we can stand this down while you give us that calculation if you want to calculate that. How the 191 square meter coverage goes down as a result of you taking off half a meter from the rear.
Okay, I will get on that right now. If you give me a few minutes, or can we go to the next applicant and come back to us? Is that possible?
Mr. Carvalino, let's do that. Okay, and then we still have to hear from the neighbor. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Or let's, let's hear from the neighbor while you're calculating that. If you can try to listen to the neighbor's concerns, and then maybe we don't have to start jumping around because we're quite behind here. So.
Mr. Chairman, the neighbor speaking will be John Langhorn.
Okay. Mr. Langhorn, can you let us know what your concerns are while Mr. DeBose does that calculation?
Absolutely. And thank you, committee, for taking the time to allow me to speak. And I would concur with Mr. DeBose that we have not spoken. Perhaps we could have resolved this had they reached out to us, but we are only aware of this through the application that we received in the mail, which is unfortunate, but I will raise my comments.
And the other thing is, if you were here in person, like the old days, then you would be able to confer out in the hallway, and perhaps often applications get resolved that way, but here we are. So first of all, where are you in relation?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're...
Yes. So I am the resident of 69 Belvedere Boulevard, which is the property immediately adjacent on the east to the subject property.
Okay.
So we are the ones right next to them. The subject property is about 1 to 2 feet higher in terms of the land on compared to its two neighbors. And the issue we have, two of the three issues relate to the drainage, and the concern being that with the increased footprint, specifically the back addition, there will be a lot less ground to absorb the rainwater. And we get flooding already from that property for a couple of reasons, which I will go through. So because the variance requested is to significantly increase the size of the, effectively what will be the roof area, and less ground to absorb the water, we would request that if this variance were to be granted, that all drainage from that property be funneled to the west and to the north, and that there be no drainage coming to the east or the south. Even though we are to the east, anything that goes to the south then just comes into our property anyway. So we would request that all drainage off the roof be to the west and north, because we do receive extra water in high rainfalls. So that is our first request if this were to be approved by the committee. The second part, and again it relates to drainage, is variance 7 relates to what I believe to be the existing structure that's already on the property, which is absolutely right on the lot line, and the variance is being requested to accept that. At this point, it's a two-car garage, and at this point, the only downspout for the eaves troughs drain directly onto our property. There's only one downspout, and it drains to the east, which is what directly onto our property. So in this, we would request that the downspout be moved so it is on the northwest corner of the garage. So it is draining onto the property 39 Montgomery, not directly onto ours. And the roof is a significant area because it's a two-car garage. So those are the first two requests to approve this. The final comment I have is with respect to the artist rendering, and again, we're just going by what we've seen. There is a fence that extends from the garage on the east side of the property. Right now, there's a series of trees that are there. I presume the trees will stay, which is our preference. With respect to the fence, the challenge here is that Belvedere, which is the road that we front on and is at the intersection of this property, bends significantly. And as the committee may or may not know, there's a large school across the street. So this is a very busy intersection. And so as the road curves, it's effectively a blind bend. And there have been many near misses, and during school drop off and pickup, there is significant traffic, people walking, people parking, sadly illegally, but it is what it is. If this fence is extended along that property line, I am concerned, we are concerned that that will just further exasperate the potential for an accident. So we would request that either A, no fence be built, but if it is, it's limited to 6-10 feet and not extend to the property line. That is going to, in our minds, just create a situation that'll be more unsafe than what it already is. So those are my three comments on the applications.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. DeBose, you'll have a chance to respond to that, but just generally speaking, Mr. Acting Secretary Treasurer, we don't typically deal with drainage type issues. I don't know where it shows downspouts on that, but the committee is correctly speaking, does not deal with issues. That's a building code issue.
Typically, the building department looks at drainage plans for new construction. I believe that they look at drainage under the Building Code Act for anything that is subject to a building permit. With respect to the fence, Toronto's fence bylaw would be applied. And for traffic issues, the applicant, if there's traffic operations issues, they can contact the right-of-way management group in Transportation Services and express concerns through that that staff.
Right. So the points that have been raised by the neighbor, all three of those points are not directly related to the committee's mandate and the committee's what the committee makes decisions on.
That's correct.
Planning issues.
If I may comment, sir, I appreciate
Sure.
what you're saying. If the applicant were to agree to some changes for the drainage or acknowledge that they will take that into consideration, then I will accept that. If they refuse or don't want to undertake that, then I would simply register a concern for the increased size of the dwelling as being detrimental to the intended bylaws that currently exist.
Okay, so your
But I
position,
would, if I got an undertaking, I would be totally pleased to understand they will fix and rectify or deal with these issues.
okay, anyway, let's hear from back from the agent on that, because I take it you're saying alternatively it's too big, the lot coverage is too big if these matters are not dealt with, as Mr. Carvalino said, and these are not issues that aren't, it's not like they aren't dealt with, but they aren't dealt with by this committee, because we deal merely with planning issues, build form and the like. So I take your position. So let's hear back from then Mr. Dobos on the issue of your concerns you have raised, notwithstanding they're not strictly planning, as to what he's prepared to state and sort of on the record.
So let us go back to the variance 1 that I was supposed to check the numbers. I called the architect right now to discuss that.
Okay.
And
yep.
We did reduce the dwelling depth, but we increased the width of the master bedroom in the back. So it is still the same coverage from previous to now. But we did reduce the dwelling depth. As for coverage, when we first did the preliminary designs, we were in communication with the forestry department, and one of the requests they had was try to reduce the amount of natural resources being damaged. That being said, so we left the garage in the place where it was for the existing footprint, and that it adds to our coverage, which is substantially from 33 to 38.3%. As for the drainage, that's going to be, a surveyor grading plan is going to have to be done, and all that drainage is going to be redirected from adjacent neighbors. That's always the intent of any property, to redirect water to, the streets, not to your adjacent neighbors.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any follow-up questions does anyone have for either the neighbor or for the agent? Mr. Taylor.
Yes, thank you, sir. Can you tell me if your increased width at the back part of the house affects variance number 3, minimum side yard setback?
No, that was number 3 is on the adjacent neighbor, which you see on the south side. So you can see the 0.57. So that did not increase. We went the opposite way, where we had a lot of room. We still stayed in the same setback. So it did not affect that variance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions for either of the speakers, or is someone ready to make a motion if there are no follow-up questions?
Mr. Chair, I find the requested variances meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I would move for approval with an amendment to variance number 4 to reduce the proposed length of the structure from 18.5 meters to 18.0 meters.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Do I have a seconder for Mr. Taylor's motion?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Reddick. All in favor? Okay, and unanimous approval. Thank you, neighbor, and thank you, Mr. DeBose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the
Langhorn.
committee. Have a good day.
You too. Our next application is 184 Park Lawn Road. It's for a new detached dwelling with an attached garage. And there are 3 variances, and we have no communication whatsoever on this application from city departments or area neighbors. The speaker on this matter is Jan Walczak.
So, Mr. Chairman, just a point of clarification. There will be an additional speaker that is not reflected on your list. That person is Mr. Kent Ty at 7 Bonneview Drive. Now, Mr. Walczak did not pre-register, and neither did his designer. And there was a lot of confusion at the beginning as to who will actually be representing this application. And this is a cautionary statement for all agents. This is the reason why we ask you to pre-register, and we are going to start clamping down on that in the future.
Okay, so we don't have Mr. Walczak here, who's listed as the owner and the agent.
Mr. Walczak is present here on WebEx.
Oh, he is?
He is.
Okay. Mr. Walczak.
Mr. Walsack is unmuted.
Okay, there's just a couple of, there's a small north side lot line, south side lot line variances. There's a small height variance of 0.23 of a meter and a soffit height variance. Sir? Mr. Walczak?
Mr. Chairman, there are several new call-in users. I'm just going to unmute.
Okay, why don't we go to Mr. Ty then? Okay. And maybe perhaps Mr. Walczak can just respond to any concerns. It does look straightforward. So why don't we hear what I don't know if Mr. Walczak is able to listen in on this, wherever he may be, but why don't we hear from the neighbor at 7 Bonneview? Kent Ty.
I have Mr. Ty also unmuted at this point. Mr. Kent Ty.
Looking on the location map. Mr. Ty or Mr. Walczak? Trying to look on the map where.
I think Mr. Walsack tried to come in on a different account. Mr. Walsack, are you there? Hello? Mr. Walsack. Jan Walsack? I don't know if he can hear us or not.
How about Mr. Ty?
Mr. Ty? Kent Ty? Hello?
Should we stand this matter down? Yeah, let's move on and hold this one down. Okay, yep. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 6, which is 21 Victor Avenue. It's an application for second and third story rear addition and to maintain the existing shed located in the side yard. And there are 5 variances. Planning is recommending refusal of variances 1 and 2, being the floor space index and the side main wall height. And we have 3 parties in opposition letters, and we do have 2 registered speakers from 23 Victor and from 2479 Country Road 50, who is the co-owner of 23 Victor. Well, we're only going to have one speaker from 23 Victor. So it's either Caroline or Kathy Kiska, as well as Steve Kanjar, the agent. Is Mr. Kanjar there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. So,
Hi, how are you?
Good. Before you get started, I just want to get you to, in the course of your presentation, if you can opine on the issue of whether the committee follows, if the committee was to follow the planning recommendation, whether it would be possible for you to build anything here. Because again, committee planning staff, which is a bit of an issue when they just object to several of the variances, not to the others. And if you can't build anything and would have to come back, then you would have certain approvals that are just up in the air, not tied to a plan. So my first question is whether if you don't get your floor space index and it remains at 0.6 from 0.69, I don't know what it is now prior to the to renovation, whether it would be possible to build anything.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment on that. Actually, I'm a new agent that was brought in on this file. The previous agent is no longer on this file. I was brought in about 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
And during that time, I was unaware that planning had been in contact with the previous agent. He kind of missed the boat on working with planning in terms of following their recommendations. Now, planning did come back and they suggested reducing the density to 0.65 and also reducing the building wall height to 8.0. Now, I'm here asking that we may need a possible deferral because we will be following planning's guidelines. I have revised drawings that I can share with you, but unfortunately, due to the late time constraints, I was unable to forward those to committee. But we are reducing variance 1 to 8 meters.
Okay.
We will be reducing
Okay,
variance
but
2.
like I said, given we don't have this here, as you say, maybe this is an appropriate case for a deferral. I'm always concerned when committee planning just says refuse the FSI or GFA, which means you couldn't do
Yes.
anything from 0.69. Sometimes they do indicate in their comments that they approached the agent and they refuse to make changes. So they say, okay, and then you don't get it, as opposed to saying, we've agreed that's at 0.65 and they've made revised plans and a waiver of the, a waiver, and that's before us. So we don't have that here. I know we do have
Yes.
neighbors present. So in answer to my question of whether you would be able to build anything at 0.6 with no variance at all being granted, as opposed to something in between 0.6 and 0.69, which sounds like you're willing to deal with community planning, it seems appropriate for a deferral. So you are asking for a deferral in that case?
Yes, if committee needs to see revised drawings, that's fine. I'm certain that we can have planning on board with our reduced variances, and also through the redesign of the rear and the 3rd floor. I believe we address a lot of the concerns that the adjacent neighbor at 23 has.
Right, because without variances 1 and 2, you basically, they should have said just refuse the whole application, because to have a few other variances standing on their own, not out of context, to me is not the right way to go. But you would like to deal with community planning to make this more appropriate, given you're the new agent
Exactly.
on the file. Okay, so let's go to
Yes.
the neighbors and ask them their position, the one neighbor on the issue of deferral, and then we can take it into committee. Is
Sure.
Caroline or Kathy Kiska there, please?
Is here, and I can speak on my sister's behalf as well as my own.
And you are?
Caroline Kiska.
Okay, you're Caroline. Okay, so Caroline,
Yes.
we're not, just not on, if you've been listening, we're not dealing on the merits
have been
at this
listening.
point, just on the issue of whether your neighbor can go back and make some changes in light of community planning's comment to come up with something, and I would suggest that they, contact you as well to keep you in the loop. It looks like it's a new agent on the file.
Okay.
So would you be content?
I just
with
want to
the
say that I do oppose a 3rd story addition.
Okay, we're not dealing on the merits, so you can let us know when you
Okay.
eventually come back. You can let the applicant know perhaps he can, so that is related, I guess, to the height variance in any case. But right now,
Yes.
we have a long agenda here, so we're just dealing on the issue of the deferral.
The deferral, okay.
So you're okay with that?
And I also want to say, yes, that's fine, but I also want to say, I don't think you mentioned that there's another neighbor that's on the phone to speak to this issue.
I'm not aware of that. All I had was the two Kiskas. So you will be re-notified. There will be, once the changes are made, there will be a fresh notification issued. So you will be re-notified when this matter comes back. And in the meantime, perhaps the agent can contact you to hear what your concerns are. Okay, so
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. So committee members on the issue of deferral, can I have a motion?
Danny Bellissimo would like to make a motion on deferral on the understanding that the applicant will meet with the neighbors.
Well, they won't meet with the neighbors. We're in the middle of COVID. We'll consult with the neighbor and.
Well, they will consult with the neighbors. Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, that's your motion. You have a seconder for that motion.
I would second the motion with an additional point that the applicant consult with community planning staff on mutually agreeable details, and that a new notice be posted when that's done.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Is that acceptable, Mr. De Bellissimo?
Sorry, could you say that again? You want them to
You, Danny, said you recommended deferral to enable the applicant to discuss with the neighbors. I added the point that the applicant needs to consult with community planning staff. It was community planning staff that raised the issue.
Yeah, so I'm okay with just consulting. I thought you said that come to an agreement, but consulting is fine, yes. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, the matter has been deferred. We'll see you all back here again. Thank you. Our next application is item 7, 25 Eagle Road. It's an application to construct a second-story addition above the existing dwelling, a second-story front balcony, and a second-story rear platform. There are 4 variances. Planning is requesting a condition of approval that it be built substantially in accordance with the front and rear elevations and a couple other matters. We have 3 letters of opposition, and we have a previous decision on the property back in October 2020, which was refused by this committee. And we have some comments by the neighbors, who we have 3 comments, neighbors weighing in that basically the application is the same as what was refused back in October. So we have registered speakers on this. The agent, Eduardo Antonio Ortiz, who is actually the owner, not the agent, who did not pre-register. And we have 3 neighbors, 36 and 38 Gardenvale Road and 66 5th Street. Mr. Ortiz, is Mr. Ortiz there?
Yes, I'm here. And I'm sorry first off for the technical difficulty. I thought I did pre-register. I'm hearing a lot in the system, so I don't know if there's a glitch there because I'm pretty sure I filled in.
Okay,
so
we have 4 variances here. We have 3 neighbors here with concerns. We have 3 letters that they've written. I don't know if you've reviewed those letters. Community planning was just looking that it be built substantially in accordance with the front and rear elevation plans as it relates to the front exterior wall height. So I assume,
correct.
But we have neighbors here with concerns, and I assume you've read their comments. They're saying it's similar to the other application was refused. So please walk us through how this application is different from what was submitted and was dealt with back in October.
So back in October, there were concerns by community planning, and they actually requested that some variances be were not being supported, and for those to be refused. I went back to consult with planning, and I now have full support from them on all the 4 variances that are being requested. on the basis that they are consistent with what has been previously supported and approved in the same area. From the neighbors' concerns point of view, I understand that they have concerns about a specific window and balcony on the rear yard. In discussions with planning, they did not seem to have concerns based on the fact that those windows are really 11.7 meters to the property line. That's 45 feet to the property line. Assuming that neighbors have the same 45 feet, we have a 90 feet difference separation for privacy. And also at the end of the day, this application will go for building permit, and the amount of glass that will be constructed will be in full compliance to the building code. So as a courtesy, despite all that, I went back and reduced about 20 square feet of vision glazing of the window in question. If you look at the rear elevation, there are 2 panels of glass. There are 4 panels in total, 2 of which have been reduced to a height of 6 feet, so that there's no, the view is blocked out on those 2 panels. So that is the 2 differences. One, full support by planning, and the second one, the 2 vision panels that have been blocked for view up to 6 feet.
Okay, sir. And actually, it's funny. This is very rare because we have a number of members who rotate. Other than the chair, the other members rotate, and it's exactly the same 3 members who heard this back last October, who were present on that. And I've just reviewed, they've given us a copy, it was not in our package. I don't know if everyone else has both the minutes and the application. And it looks like the variances, and you said there's some changes with windows, but the variances themselves are exactly the same. I think we had 2 of the 3 same neighbors present, 36 and 38 Gardenvale, who are standing by. There's 1 extra neighbor here, but the variances, correct me if I'm wrong, are exactly the same.
The variances are the same, but they were not fully supported in the previous application. Planning had a report requesting that one of the variances be refused. I resubmitted the drawings back to planning and made some adjustments so that now their report is actually in full support.
Well, yeah, planning actually, I don't know what does it say here what they did? It just said there was in the minutes, it says there was a staff report. It doesn't say what the staff report was. The staff report now is to tie it to the plans. I don't know if they've changed that in their, or explain in their support letter of why they can support this if they didn't support it last time.
It was related to height. It was related to the height of one of the elevations. And I believe that's why they're requesting that the front elevation be conditional on the front elevation staying substantially the same.
Okay, so are you saying then that the height variances, although they're the same because it's tied to plans, it's not the full roof, so it may be that there's less points.
It's less. It was dropped.
Yeah, so it was
correct. It was dropped, and they requested. Yes, and I'm prepared to have those variances approved on condition that we stay with the provided front elevation.
Yeah, it says the proposed development constructed substantially in accordance with the front and rear elevation plans.
And rear elevation.
Front exterior wall height, submitted October 19th.
Right.
Just looking.
Yes.
I was just looking if the planner mentioned the fact that you had an application for the exact same thing, which they didn't support and was refused, and explaining why they're approving it this time. They actually don't specifically mention the previous application that I can see. In any event, let's hear from the neighbors, and you'll have a chance to respond. Before we do that, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Ortiz at this point, before we hear from the neighbor? He's explained and answered my question that although the variances are identical to the application was refused back in October, that in fact it is different, and that's why the planning is asking it be tied to the plan, because the height is not the height through the whole roof, but just in certain points, and they are now in acceptance. Unfortunately, they should have explained that in their planning report, but they don't.
Mr. Chair, I do have a copy of the September 28th, 2020 staff report. The recommendation by planning staff with the original application was to reduce the front and rear exterior main wall heights. To refuse the 9.2 meter high front and rear exterior main walls.
Right.
That was variance 3. That's the recommendation that was
Right,
made.
and the committee followed that, and they refused the entire application. I believe it was a motion by Ms. Reddick, and now he's come back with the same application in terms of the variances, but planning staff is now, although they don't quite say so in their report, which they should have outlined that to help us not have to go through this whole inquiry here, noticing that in fact it is different according to Mr. Ortiz, because it is now tied to the plan, and the height has come down substantially in other areas. It's just not across. The variance obviously points the most direct, the highest point, and then because it's tied to the plan, that protects the fact that the applicant can take that approval of 9.2 and do the entire roof at that height. So in that understanding, let's hear from the neighbors who, I guess Ranjit Karna and Edward Schatz weighed in here last time back in October. And as well, we have another neighbor at 66 Fifth Street. So I hope they've been able to hear what we've been discussing, and if we can have their comments based on whether they're still in opposition on that basis. Now that community planning has changed their position based on what the applicant is telling us. Is Mr. Karna there?
And good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chair, and the members of the committee.
Welcome back.
Thank you. My name is Ranjit Karna, and my wife and I live on 36 Gardenville, which is directly behind or on the east side of 25 Eagle.
Okay.
And yes, the variances seem to be exactly the same. The main concerns were with the balcony and the height. And as far as the height is concerned, I must say that I'm not technically expert, so I don't quite understand. I'll leave that to the committee and the planning department. However, the balcony, it's not a minor variance, as it was ruled during the October 20 meeting, and the balcony area is exactly the same, and therefore the concerns remain the same. And I would have to say that and agree with the committee's last decision, which said that one of the ruling was that the variance is not considered desirable to the appropriate development of the land, and in the opinion of the committee, the variances is not minor.
Yeah, okay.
So,
that's the standard. That's the standard wording. So you still have a concern with the size of the second floor, not the front balcony, the second floor rear platform of 10 meters, where 4 meters is permitted, and you feel it's. We want to hear back where that is off and why it's 10 meters and not 4 meters from the applicant when he responds. But in addition to the height, which he's now brought down to the committee's planning staff, you have a concern with the area of the balcony for overlook issues. So does anyone else have second floor large balconies in the area that you're aware of?
Well, I'm not aware of any balconies of that size, or even not that many balconies at all. There is, however, a property, I believe the 45 Van Dusen, they have a platform. However, that platform is designed as an overhang and a shelter for the backyard veranda. and it's not enclosed. The overhang, it's not designed as a balcony, it's simply a overhang. And that's the only thing I'm aware of, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. So we know your concerns. Let's hear from the your next door neighbor. And again, the applicant will have a chance to respond to what you have to say. So we now have the neighbor at next door. Edward Schatz at 38 Gardenvale.
Right, that's me. This is Edward Schatz, 38 Gardenvale Road. You can hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Fantastic. I'll just go through a couple of quick points. My wife and I, as you've seen from the letter, continue to have concerns about the area of the balcony and the privacy issues that it would continue to pose to us. The size of the windows and the direct sight lines into, the backyard and homes, especially in the winter and other non-leafy times of year. So that doesn't disappear at all. It's still part of our concerns. I do have questions that maybe the committee or the applicant could address. One is, I think there's some kind of indication that there may be a precedent. I don't know what the precedent in the neighborhood is that he
deal
might
with
be.
each application on its own merits, so we're not really concerned
Fair enough.
with precedents, more so.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So you
Fair
still
enough.
have, just like your neighbor, you still have concerns with the balcony. You've heard how the city is no longer concerned with the
Yeah.
height.
Yeah.
Because they're going to tie it to the particular plan, which
Yeah.
is not the height
Yeah.
throughout. So you still have concerns with the oversized balconies at the rear.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We do, and the possibility for large gatherings on a large a balcony of large size.
Yeah, I'm also going to ask him whether that's off a
Mhm.
bedroom or whether it's off a common area, which would sort of perhaps impact. But you're saying the potential with 10 square meters versus 4 square meters does permit more people to congregate on the balcony.
Yeah, let me just mention several quick things because I know time is short. I think Mr. Carno was mentioning 45 Van Dusen. I think he means 45 Gardenvale because by the description, that's the only one that where there's this overhang for the first floor, but doesn't seem to be doesn't seem to be a balcony. I don't know what he's permitted to build, but certainly there is no balcony there right now.
Right.
A couple other things. I know that there's another person described as a neighbor from 66 5th Street, if I got that right, who's scheduled to speak. I don't know that that's actually a neighbor. That doesn't sound like it's in the neighborhood, so that might be worth
We do
clarifying.
also have a letter from the neighbor, your next door neighbor at 40. We also have
Right.
a letter from that neighbor with also concerns on the proposed terrace at the east rear side.
Okay.
So the same.
Okay. And finally, I'll just say, just by way of wrapping up, I thought that the committee was recommending that Mr. Ortiz come to the neighbors and or consult because of COVID with us about to try to come to some sort of understanding. That didn't happen. As far as I can tell, he reapplied 13 days after the original refusal. So I'd hoped that he would come around. He, in fact, did come around briefly to introduce himself in advance of the original application. So, he knows where we live, and he was kind enough to do that then, and he didn't come around, and I was surprised by that and had hoped for something different.
Or at least to explain why he's coming back to the exact same application, albeit it's different because it's now the roof plan has changed. But yeah, because obviously I was concerned, confused. The other members, what's changed here? So it would have been worthy maybe for next time for let him to know when this situation occurs that. Well, I think he's the owner. He's not an agent though. So, if he was an agent that does this regularly, he would have perhaps known better. But he'll know for next time. Okay, does anyone have any questions
Thank
for
you.
Mr. Schatz before we move on to the last speaker, and then we'll go back to Mr. Ortiz? Okay, Richard Bach from 66 5th Street, if you can please be with us.
Mr. Chairman, it's Ronald Bach. He is unmuted at the moment. Mr. Bach?
Hello.
Okay,
Hello.
it's working. Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Bach. Can you
Hi,
please? What's your?
I'm actually an applicant. I'm not, I have no interest in this case. I'm an applicant for, I think, item either 7 or 8. It was 8 when it was sent to me in the
Oh,
agenda,
okay.
but
Yeah, I see that you're the applicant on the next the next matter. They've transposed
yeah.
your name twice. Okay. There it said your name is Ronald Simpson Bach. Is Simpson your middle name? Anyway, okay, so he's not on this application.
Yes, that is correct. Yes, I'm Ronald Simpson Bach, yes.
Okay, so we'll see you, we'll talk to you in a few minutes. So let's go
Thank
back to Mr. Ortiz. Mr. Ortiz, can you please respond, notwithstanding your explanation why you came back, and the height is now different. Your neighbors continue to have an issue with the oversized second floor rear deck. Can you advise what room that's off of and why it's oversized?
Yes, I can respond to that. So the balcony is off 2 bedrooms. I will also like to respond to the fact that 45 Gardenville, I consulted with them. They were approved for a platform that was larger than 10 square meters as a balcony. They just decided not to construct it, but the approval by this committee was for a balcony. Now, at the end of the day, if this committee finds that as of right, I'm allowed to build a 4 meter square balcony. The only reason why it's the size it is because I'm doing an addition and I have the ground floor wall below that I'm keeping. And for construction purposes, it makes sense for the balcony to be the size it is. To me, the only difference is that I'm standing there on 4 square meters. I have a space that is 3 feet wide versus the space being 2 feet wider. If this committee finds that that makes a difference between standing up there or me sitting in a chair with a little table there, I'm prepared to pull back that railing 4 meters and incur the extra construction cost to make my neighbors happy so that I'm as of right as 4 square meters with a balcony. It seems to me that, this is an extra expense that I'm willing to take just to make some people happy.
Okay, so does anyone have any questions then for the neighbors or for Mr. Ortiz? Or can we take it we'll take it into committee for a decision?
Mr. Chair, I'm satisfied that the first 3 variances meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and that the variance number 4 is a contentious issue of interest to the neighbors. So I would recommend approval with the removal of variance number 4.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taylor. Do I have a seconder for that motion?
I will second that.
Thank you, Ms. Ruddick. All in favor? Okay, you have unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Ortiz, and thank you, neighbors, for your input as well.
Mr. Chair, I believe we're ready for item 5 that was stood down earlier.
Yep. So returning to 5. Okay, this
Hi,
is
everyone.
Park Lawn.
Yep. Hello, how are you?
Hello, we were looking for either Jan Walczak or Kent Tai.
This is Jan speaking.
Okay. Jan, so I had introduced your application earlier, and I had made note of the fact that there are 3 variances. It's a new build, and there are no input by neighbors or city staff, but we do have a neighbor, Mr. Tai, at 7 Bonnie View Drive. So with your permission, let's hear from that neighbor, and you'll have a chance to respond to your their concerns, unless anyone has any preliminary questions for Mr. Walczak, the owner. Okay, if no one has any questions, let's hear from the neighbor, and then Mr. Walczak can respond to any concerns raised. Kent Tai of 7 Bonnie View.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Kent Tai dropped off the call, but I have a new anonymous call-in user, so I'm just going to unmute them and see if That's one of, that is him.
Yep.
Is Mr. Kent Ty using a telephone? Is Mr. Kent Ty there, please? Hello, Mr. Kent Ty? I don't think we have him any longer, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, suggest that we stand it down for another few minutes
Okay.
and continue with the agenda.
Okay, let's do that. Okay, next application is item number 8, 66 Fifth Street. And we know that the applicant's here because we had him appearing inadvertently as a neighbor on the last application. So this is an application to legalize and maintain the existing secondary street and a second-story rear platform. There are 2 variances. We have an order to comply, and transportation advises there's no objection. We have Mr. Ronald Simpson Bach, who we spoke to briefly, as well as we have 2 neighbors at 44 4th Street and 68th 5th Street. Mr. Bach?
Hello, good morning.
Okay, you have 2 variances. You are here to legalize and maintain a secondary suite and a second-story rear platform. Can you
Yes.
explain what happened? How was this built that it has to now be legalized? And I note that the second-story platform is oversized, and you have a main entrance to the secondary street at the front, which is not permitted. So why are you coming here after the fact? If you can please explain. We have an order to comply here.
Yep. So the first of the 2 issues is the front of the house, which was when we purchased the house, the previous owners had converted the front the garage, the basement garage, to the existing doorway with a stairway. And when we submitted our initial plans to do some work in the interior of the house, that included upgrading the already existing suite that was down there, and then also the platform that we'll discuss in a second. We submitted those plans. We were flagged for by and sent to committee last year for an issue about parking, which concerned the front of the house, but there was no mention of, because this front entrance existed when we purchased the house. Like there was a door.
The secondary entrance was there. When did you purchase? How long ago was that?
We purchased February 5th, 2019.
Okay, was there already a secondary suite in the house?
Yes, there was. Yeah.
Where is that, in the basement?
Yes.
Okay. So you said you bought it this way. You weren't aware. Your lawyer didn't check.
No. Yeah. So we weren't, and neither did planning when we submitted our drawings, because this was just the part of the existing drawings. So our first application, this wasn't flagged as an issue. The parking, there's an issue created by parking, which is why we were before the committee last summer. But during that process, at no time did someone let us know that this was also an issue. So yeah, we received no advice. And just for context, we're our contractor, we lost our contractor during COVID. So we were kind of all of the major work had been done by the contractor, and then there were just a couple of finishing things that we had to finish because he was unable to continue due to COVID. So we're which is why I'm here representing myself.
Okay, committee members, did anyone have any questions for Mr. Bach before we hear from the neighbors? Okay, if there are none, let's hear from Adriana Nedelcu at 44 4th Street.
I do not really have any questions right now. Thank you. The clarifications are perfect.
Okay, Thank you. Then we'll go to the neighbor, Headley Thompson at 66 Fifth Street. Oh, hold on, that's 68 next door.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Thompson hung up just as you called on his name, so he's no longer on the line.
Okay. If he's not on the line, he's not on the line. So, so Mr. Bach, you're in terms of responding to the concerns raised with one neighbor, it says they're satisfied. I don't know where their connection was at 44 4th Street, how close they were. And as well, we can't reach the neighbor at 68 5th next door who appears to have hung up the phone. So let's see if committee members have any questions for you or if someone's ready to make a motion.
Thank you.
On this application.
Mr. Chair, I find the requested variances to be in keeping with the four tests under the Planning Act, and I recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We have a seconder for Mr. Taylor's motion.
Bellissimo seconds the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Bellissimo. All in favor? Unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Bach.
Thank you, committee.
Okay, have a good day. Yes. Okay. It's like the fourth time we've gone back to this, so.
Mr. Chairman, the neighbor for item number 5 is simply not here, so they've
Okay, well, it's enough already.
they're nowhere to be found.
Tried 3 times for this Mr. Ty, so we have to move on.
I need to step away for 2 minutes. I'm not sure if you're able to continue without me, but I will return.
Wonderful. Okay, Mr. Walzack. We can't find your neighbor, so we'll just take it into committee then.
Okay, thank you.
We've already heard from you, correct? You have three variances. Planning staff has no concerns. They appear to be, you only have 3 minor variances. So committee members, someone ready to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I find the variances to be in keeping with the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I move for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We have a seconder for that, Mr. It's up to you, Mr. Bellissimo.
Mr. Bellissimo seconds the motion from Mr. Taylor.
All in favor? Unanimous approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, committee.
Okay, the next application is number 9, 113 4th Street. This is an application to construct a 2nd-story addition above the existing dwelling and a new rear yard deck. There are 6 variances. We have 1 letter of opposition from 72 3rd Street. They're located at the rear and appeared they refused to the height variance. And that's all we have. We have no comments from city departments. Registered to speak on this application is Tomas Goral, the agent, who did not pre-register. Mr. Goral.
Good morning, committee members and chair. My name is Thomas Goral. I'm the, pardon?
I just said good morning.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm the agent for the application. I was under the impression that I was registered, so I do apologize for not registering.
Okay, so there's no comments from planning department or anything. There is a neighbor from the neighbor at 72 3rd Street that appears to have an issue with number 8 and 4, variance 4, the maximum height. Again, it's
Correct.
only, I think you're at 7.43, and what's permitted, as I said when I was doing my review, it was just slightly over. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Not only that, the variance for a flat roof is 7.2. That's why it's a bit lower. If we had done a traditional peak roof, it would have been 9.5.
Yeah, okay. But
And
you're only,
actually, in my opinion, it would have created more of an obstruction of the view.
yeah, okay, you're only 0.2 of an error. So we have that letter. There's no other letters and no other concerns from my city department. So let's see if committee members have any questions for you or if someone's ready to make a motion.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I find the 6 variances to meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I move for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We have a seconder from the virtual members.
Danny Bellissimo seconds the motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay, unanimous approval. Okay.
Thank you very much.
I think we're going to just take a 5-minute break, and we'll come back at just before noon. And at that point, we'll do item number 10. Thank you.
We have had a couple of 9:31 and 3 p.m. before.
Yeah, well, we've been stuck at 9:30 and 1 for a while. So I checked over with Barb before I moved.
Yeah, well, that
She's
makes
okay
sense.
with it. It just means that fewer people on the call, and you have less bandwidth to worry about who's busy. Second.
Yeah, We gotta worry about 10 people, not 20. Yeah, I hear you. Good, good plan.
We're all good? I don't think we have Sophie and Danny here.
Here's Danny.
Miss Roddick and Mr. Bellissimo were about to begin momentarily.
Get started. We're back on YouTube. Okay, our next application is item number 1012 MUNCEY Avenue. It's an application to construct 2-story rear and south side additions and a new detached garage. And there are 5 variances. Planning is recommending refusal of not the entire application, but items 1, 2, and 3, which seems to me that they're 2 or 3 out of the 5 variances. The planning report indicates, as sometimes it does, they recommend this when when they approach the applicant refuses to make changes. So that's all we have on this application. Transportation, I believe, is okay. They've weighed in with some comments. Yeah, they have no objection. So the speaker on this application for the agent is Charles Sajarda, as well as we have the neighbors at 10 Muncie, and we have the owner at 12 Muncie, who I guess is not going to be speaking. I assume the agent is speaking?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Iris Linton will not be speaking.
Okay. So let's hear from the agent before we hear from the neighbor.
Hi,
Specifically,
can you hear me?
Comment on the planning report and their recommendations.
Okay, can anyone hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Charles Sharda. I'm the agent for the Linton family, whom I've known for over 10 years. The planning process with the family began about a year ago in January 2020. After completing a long process of coming up with a suitable design concept, we did start to approach neighbors, and especially the neighbor to the north at number 14 Muncie. And I actually have a letter of support, a letter of support from them.
Yeah, actually, let me just interrupt. Just hold on a second. I forgot that I had been handed. Usually it's all electronic, but I guess these came in late. We do have letters from 20 Muncie and from 14 Muncie, right next door, lending their support for the project, having viewed the blueprints and sketches. Okay, so they're in favor, and as well as the neighbor at number 20.
Yes, it was, again, because of COVID, it was very difficult to get actual letters, but we did a lot of canvassing and talking while we could. So we especially went to the neighbors on the north because this design would block their sunlight, and we worked it out with them, and everything was fine. I will say that we had no problems with transportation. Engineering was very helpful in getting information. Forestry wasn't an issue. I will say that I've come before this committee approximately 10 times in my lifetime for family and friends because I'm a builder designer. And with due respect, city planning has never been helpful, never been supportive, have always opposed whatever I have proposed. But the more frustrating thing was they don't give reasons for why they recommend this. So the variants they're opposed to, the three variances, two of them are essentially the same, but they're the old bylaw and the new bylaw, and that's the proposed dwelling length. And our design could not accommodate what they wanted. And if one is to look at the plans, the backyards in this neighborhood are immense. Over 82 feet from the existing house to the back fence. And we're only proposing to build in approximately 22, or the garage, 25 feet of that. So we could not change. It was not that we refused, we tried, but we could not make it happen. So I realized that the neighbor to the south has called in, and I tried to reach out to her this morning by phone to see if we could talk about it, but was unable. I left a message, but was unable to. And the other neighbors that we talked to, the two neighbors directly across the street who will look at this, there's a huge house across the street. Dominic and Anna live there, and they own the house beside them. They were very supportive, but because of COVID, didn't want to give a letter or have interface with me more than necessary. Then I went to the rear neighbor, because they'll be looking at this on Turpin. That's at number 5 Turpin. And the tenant told me that Dominic and Anna, who live across the street of Muncie, they own that house also. So these people owned the 3 houses in front of and behind, and they were verbally very supportive. Yeah, I'm just at the myself and the Linton family. We are at your asking for this, and I'm willing to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, Mr. Saji, we do have your covering letter as well. Let's hear then from the neighbor at number 10, and you'll have a chance to respond to any concerns that they raise. Sue Tai?
Yes.
Welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yes. I just want to ask, when he does, since he's gonna do the new attached garage, will he be? So that means he's gonna demolish the old one, right? Will he be, removing the fence, or is he just gonna leave it as is when he did the foundation to build the new attached garage?
Okay, so that's your question. We'll have him respond to that. Do you have any other questions? We can do them all at once, or is that your one question?
So far, this is the only question I have for now.
Okay, because I want you to just finish your submission, and then we're going to finish with you, and then go back to him. So that's your one concern, is you want to know about is the old garage going to be demolished, and what's happening with the fence?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we'll have your neighbor respond to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Sharda?
If I could respond to that, definitely the existing wood frame garage would be dismantled, and the fence, it is quite decrepit. We are willing to bear the cost of replacing the fence, and we will talk to, I understand her name is Sue. We'll talk to Sue about what style is best suited, because the fence that is there now is not very solid. It's on steel spikes with 4x4s coming out of it, and it would definitely commit to having a solid, good neighborly fence built.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, any questions for the agent or the neighbor for that matter, or are we ready for a motion?
Mr. Chair, I find the requested variances meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. The seconder for Mr. Taylor's motion.
Danny Bellissimo seconds the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Bellissimo. All in favor? You have your approval unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Saji. Okay. Okay, item number 11 is the next application, 44 VEROBEACH Boulevard. It's an application to construct a new front porch, a detached garage, and a covered patio at in the rear yard. There are 5 variances. We have a copy of easement encroachment consent with agreement with Bell. We have 1 letter of opposition, 3 letters of support, and as well a petition in support. Registered to speak on this application, and I think someone has some kind of a radio on or something, is Marco Vieira, and then we have three neighbors registered to speak as well.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Chair. My name is Marco Vieira, and I'm the agent and the designer for this application.
Okay, I'd like to just give us a brief presentation on this. We have 3 neighbors. I haven't spoken to any of them. We have a letter, some letters of support, and 1 letter of concern, which I'm sure you've seen.
Sure. I'd like to start by outlining or giving you a breakdown of the existing site context. So our property from front to back is relatively flat, but there is a very high change in elevation from our northern limit of our property to the lot behind us that front onto Gulf Stream. So approximately 3 meters in vertical difference. As a result, when my client was building the retaining wall in the back, that's when we first learned that we had to obtain easement from Bell, that they currently have an easement along the back property line. It basically catches the lots that face Vero Beach and Gulfstream. I understand that the neighbor that may be in opposition has to do with the fact that when the work was commenced along the back property line, because of being irregular and not complying with the setbacks, we had to stop, obtain a building permit, go to committee of adjustments, and the proper backfilling of the back wall was not done. I believe that's their concern. So in building this garage that we're proposing along with the covered patio and storage area, it essentially will only be approximately 1 meter in height when looked at from the properties in the north. To the properties on the east and west, it complies with the allowed height for the accessory structure for the garage. There are no variances associated with the front porch. And the proposal, it basically reinstates part of the existing backyard into a landscaped area, and the existing driveway is being maintained. So visually, the impact of that proposed garage to the neighbors along Gulfstream on the north, it'll be none. It'll actually be below any fence lines. Our client does intend to fix the grade issues in the back, where we have to properly backfill against the retaining wall that's built on the easement through the easement that belongs to Bell, and then rectify the grading there. So that's essentially our proposal. I could answer any questions you may have or address the concerns that the neighbor may have. The two adjacent neighbors are in support, as are other neighbors on the street.
Thank you, Mr. Vera. As I pointed out, I had some, there was a letter of, in terms of the speakers, there are no 3 speakers. One of the speakers is, I guess, your client at 44. They're available for questions, but they won't be speaking. And
yes.
I see the neighbor at 39 is in support, registered as a speaker. I guess they can speak in support. We do have the one neighbor in opposition, 41 Gulf Street, and I've been reading their letter. It appears to be, with respect to your clients, dragging their feet on repairing some damage in the rear that occurred in the fall of 2019. And they sent some pictures, but the pictures are, I can't read them. There's some pixelation issues with those pictures that they send, so I really can't see what they've done. Yes. But you said something about that they are going to repair this damage?
They do, and they have to, but they were instructed by inspections to stop any of the work along the back. And I told them the same thing, just because of the issue with the not complying with the setbacks. So just to make sure that, we get the variances first before they go and do any additional work, so that they would possibly not get a fine from inspections.
Okay, so because I see that it looks like this neighbor, and we're going to hear from them right now, I want to hear if they have any issues with the construction or the planning issues per se, other than the fact that your client has not tended to this repair for over a year, and that they're not answering his calls and set out in their letter. So
and
let's
that's
hear from either Giuseppe or Nicola Arcadi at 41 Gulfstream. Mr. and Mrs. Arcadi there?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to unmute them, but
okay. What about Edith George? I think she's in support, but she's registered.
Okay, let me give Edith George a shot. 1 second. Miss George?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Good afternoon, Chair and committee. I have lived across the road from 44 Vero Beach Boulevard since 1986. I'm so very pleased to have neighbors following the city regulations, rebuilding these various structures on this property. I am in full support of this development application. And if you have any questions, please ask me. But I'm so pleased with this young couple who are following all the regulations to make a better area to live. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and very neighbor of you to speak in support. Not too many people. Usually people are speaking, it's in opposition. We do have the petition signed by you and other neighbors here. So thank you. Committee members have any questions for the neighbor?
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
that's Mr. Accardi.
Okay, Mr. Arcadi. Mr.
Yes.
Arcadi, welcome.
Hello.
I have your letter
I
here.
submitted a. Sorry.
I'm saying I see the letter you've sent to your neighbor and
Yes.
you copied us.
I submitted that letter, and I would like it to be considered as a condition of the permit.
Yeah, we can't, the neighbors, your neighbor's agent has stated on the record that they're gonna fix that. We can't really make that's an extraneous, we can't make that a conditional of approval. But what I wanted to say is whether you have any.
Well, he said he wasn't gonna do anything else. He said that's good enough what he did. Meanwhile, I have a hole in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I have the landscaping is like not level.
Yeah,
The
I
grass
couldn't
is not growing properly.
Yeah, I wasn't able to see your pictures. There were some problems with the pixelation, so I haven't been able to, couldn't really make out. I don't know if the other members have the same.
You know, I sent a copy to my neighbor, and he did not send a response.
Yes. he
So
said
I
he hasn't
assume he does
returned your
not want
phone
to fix
call.
it.
You were mentioning.
No, he has not. No, he has not.
And this
So I'm
happened
trying to
over-
be a good neighbor, cordially, and but he has not responded to me. And when I do call him, he does not answer.
No, I believe I've read your letter, and the tone of it is very nice. You're saying you've done your best to be patient. You're patient and
Yes.
tolerant people. You're trying to be a good neighbor and resolve it amicably. So I want to hear back from Mr. Vieira. We cannot make that a
And
condition, but
I want to
make-
say that he started construction without a permit illegally.
Yes.
And he said he was just going to build a retaining wall, and then all of a sudden he started building a garage with no permit.
Right. Okay.
How is that legal?
Yeah. So he's now come before the committee in order to make it legal, and you have to provide it legally. But with respect to the repair on your property, I just want to hear back from Mr. Vieira in response to that on the record.
Well, like I said, I want it to be considered as a condition of the permit. If not, then
I'm advised by
I don't
staff
know.
that we're unable to do that.
Okay, well, I just want it on record.
Let's hear from Mr. Carvalino, the acting secretary
I
treasurer.
would like that on record, that I submitted it.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, this is a matter between two private individuals, and it would be inappropriate to include it as a condition.
Thank you. Okay. So committee.
Well, I disagree.
Okay, you're at liberty to disagree, but the staff member has weighed in that it would be inappropriate for us to include this as a condition. We have your
So
your
what are my
letter.
options?
Well, I want to hear.
What are
from
my
Mr.
options if he does
I
not fix
wanna
my
hear from
property?
Mr. You said in your letter you can take him to small claims court if necessary.
Yes.
But let's hear from Mr. Vieira.
I don't want
at
to
least on the
escalate to
record.
that.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure he doesn't want to do that either. So let's hear back from Mr. Vieira.
But he has an obligation to fix it properly.
Yes. Right, but the question is what the right forum to force him to do that. I would also like it to be done amicably on that basis. So let's hear from Mr. Vieira, who represents your neighbor. Mr. Vieira?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair and committee members, he will have to correctly backfill along the back of the retaining wall as part of the building permit inspections. And he has intent to do that. He's just, wanting to get the okay from committee and in terms of the permit so that he can then complete the work. He will have to go above that existing retaining wall that's now sits there, and additional, drainage material will have to be put on there to make the situation. I don't think my clients have any intention to not work with the neighbors.
Okay, but he's
I
certainly,
just-
Mr. Vieira, and I know you a long time, you're a reputable agent, you appear before this committee often.
Yes.
It's not right for your client, if it's what Mr. Arcadi is saying is correct, just ignore him for over a year, not return his phone calls. He sent a very nice letter back, which is in our package, and
I
to
agree.
not respond to that is really not a very neighborly thing to do, and then want people to be amenable to what they want to do in terms of construction and coming to committee to either support or object to their development. Always try to put myself in the other party's shoes.
No,
So
and
you're telling me on the
ready.
record that your client is going to resolve this and do the backfilling that's necessary to repair the damage to their property that he caused over a
Yes,
year ago?
and I will definitely convey that to him and make sure that it gets done during the inspections.
Okay, thank you. Okay, committee members, any questions for either the neighbor or for Mr. Vieira, or are we, or the neighbor in support for that matter, or are we ready for a motion?
Danny Bellissimo would like to ask questions of the applicant.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
This is just for clarification for me to understand the variances, because they call them ancillary building, but they have in bracket detached garage. So my question is that covered patio area considered part of the garage? Is that why it just makes reference to the garage and not the patio area that's covered with a roof?
Yes, so the area of that patio area, the additional storage on the side of the garage gets added to that. And that's why they've included that under the auxiliary use. And there's the increase on the percentage that we're seeking for the approval because it gets added to the garage area.
I see. So it's basically that if it was just a garage, you wouldn't be exceeding. It's the ancillary part, that's the patio covered area that brings you over the.
Correct.
Correct. Thank you for clarifying that.
No problem.
Any other questions, or is someone ready to weigh in with a motion?
Mr. Chair, I find the 5 requested variances meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I move for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Seconded for Mr. Taylor's motion. Ms. Reddick?
Yes, I second that motion.
Thank you. All in favor? You have unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Vieira.
Thank you, Mr. Chair
Thank
and
you,
members.
Mr. Arcadi. Hopefully this will be resolved to your satisfaction. Okay, item number 12 is 1 Velma Drive. This is an application to construct a 1-story rear addition with a covered rooftop deck, a secondary suite, and a 2nd-story addition over the existing dwelling. And there are 11 variances. Planning is asking that this matter be deferred. Transportation has no objection. And registered to speak is Susan Mintz, the agent who's also requesting a deferral. Susan Mintz?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Susan Mintz, and I'm the planner for the owners of 1 Velma Drive. Okay. Today, we are seeking a deferral.
Yep.
We've been working with the city, making modifications to the design when the public notice was released as per the planning staff report dated January 13th. According to the updated zoning certificate that's reflective of these modifications, the proposed lot coverage and platform area were significantly reduced. However, there was an increase in density. So accordingly, we would need an updated public notice.
Okay. So yeah, so both you and community planning are looking for a deferral. There's no one else present here. I do note you do have provided 5 letters of support. So committee members, we're looking for a motion to defer.
Danny Bellissimo would like to make a motion for deferment.
Okay.
Sophia Reddick, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Unanimous approval. Matter is deferred. We'll see you here.
Thank you.
Ms. Mintz.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item number 13 is 30 Ann Arbor Road. It's an application to construct a new detached dwelling with an attached garage. There are 5 variances. Planning is recommending refusal of variances 3 and 4, the depth and the length. They are not concerned, it appears, with the coverage and the other variances, the front of the landscaping. So that is their recommendation. And registered to speak on this application is Romu Martins, the owner, who didn't pre-register. Mr. Martins?
Yes, good afternoon. This is actually my first time. It's for my own house. I didn't know anything about pre-registering.
Okay. That's just in the time of COVID. It's just because of COVID that you were doing it virtually. So you've seen the planning report, sir?
I did. I mean, like everyone has ups and downs in life. And I'm kind of just coming out of one, and I was kind of always wanted to build my own dream home, and this is what I kind of came up with. I was just hoping you guys would allow me.
Did planning staff get in touch with you with respect to their concerns and give you an opportunity to do something?
Yes, they
in
asked
between,
me. They asked me if I could change the style of it, so I would stay within, I guess, the setback. I mean, if you guys decide that I have to, then I will. But I was hoping I could keep the.
Yeah, well, they're concerned with the depth and the length. Have you? No other neighbors have weighed in with concerns or anything. Have you spoken to your neighbors?
I've lived at this address for 10 years, and you know the ones right next to me is the ones I talk to mostly. We just everybody says on their driveway, "Hi, good morning," and I kind of mentioned to them that I was planning on building a house, and they were all for it.
Okay.
Good for you, and kind of stuff like that. But
okay, let's see if committee members have any questions for you, or if someone's ready to make a motion. So planning seems to be without any indication of what they would find it acceptable in between, or give you an opportunity. As recommended, we do not give you the length and depth variances. They do feel it's not in keeping with the consistent with the prevailing physical character of the neighborhood and exceeds the scale of development. So they're only prepared to give you the other variances. I know you don't have any. You have a coverage? I don't think you have a coverage one here. You do.
Just I think like 0.4,
and it's just slightly over. It's 0.4 over. I guess that's not one of the ones they don't like variances 3 and 4. Right, the length and the depth. Your coverage is slightly over. So committee members, does anyone have any questions for the applicant? And if not, is someone ready to make a motion on this application?
Danny Bellissimo would like to ask a question of the applicant. You prepared these drawings, so are you able to answer the question in terms of length and depth? I don't see any lines on your survey or plan that shows it. Is this just that one section of the kitchen? Basically, that's zigzag. It's not right across the whole back.
Yeah, it's just a section of the kitchen. The actual top floor, the second floor actually is within the required measurements, if I'm not mistaken.
So what planning is asking to do is to cut back that whole kitchen, and it's only, I see, 5 meters wide. It's only about less than a third of the whole property width. Is that correct?
Can you repeat that? Sorry,
Sorry, the kitchen I see is only 5 meters wide.
Correct.
And your whole building is almost 14 meters. So it's about a third of the width. It doesn't seem to me that that's a major problem in terms of the overall impact on the site. So I just wanted to clarify that because there's no length and depth line. I couldn't see where it stopped.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
Very good point, Mr. Bellissimo. The variance that the city planning finds objectionable is not across the whole lot. It's just in the sort of about a third and a half to accommodate the kitchen. So perhaps if one of the members or the members were in favor, they could just avoid that problem by just having it tied to the plan to make sure he doesn't go right across the entire rear, width of the house to go to the extent of that depth and length variance. So perhaps that can be dealt with in a motion. Does anyone else have any questions for the applicant?
Could I ask that? Sorry, since you've asked you to comment on that, I asked the applicant that question as well. Would you be comfortable if we approved it and tied it to the plans as you submitted? Meaning you can't change the outline of that kitchenette at the end?
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be happy with that, as opposed to getting it refused. I don't think we
Yeah.
have to ask him that question. We can.
Please, I'm asking the question. You're okay with that motion if we tie it to the plans?
So if I keep my kitchen as it is on the plans?
Basically, the layout would be remain substantially in accordance with the plans.
So you broke out there, the layout?
Would be substantially in accordance with the plan.
Yeah, this is actually, this is what I've been planning for a long time, and this is what I came up with. This is exactly what I want to build.
Thank you.
Yeah, that would give him, to keep him honest, that in any event, if he tried to add something more, we'd be caught with his coverage anyway, because he's only over 0.4 in the coverage. But in any event, I think that's a good solution. If you'd like to make a motion to that effect, if no one else has any questions.
Danny Bellissimo would like to make a motion. I consider that the variances are minor in nature and be subject to tying the approval to the plans as submitted to the committee.
Okay, and I think we have urban forestry condition number 1 on this one. Okay, you add that to your motion, Mr. Bellissimo?
Yes, that's my motion to approve the variances.
Okay, I'm just asking, you're happy to add to that the urban forestry condition to your motion?
Oh, sorry. Yes, urban forestry, you're right. There is a condition on this. I meant to add the forestry condition.
Okay, is there someone to second Mr. Bellissimo's motion?
Sophia Reddick, I'm prepared to second the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Reddick. All in favor? You have unanimous approval. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Next application is item number 14, 68 ROYALAVON Crescent. It's an application to construct a new detached dwelling with an attached garage. A previous Committee of Adjustment application approved variances relating to lot coverage, gross floor area, side yard setback, building length, building height, and exterior stair width. That was back in February 2020, and it was to be built substantially in accordance with those plans at that time. You're now back, the applicant is now back for length and depth variances. We have 2 letters of opposition, and the applicant is, the agent is Marin Zabzuni.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So I think you need to make a presentation. We have a couple of objection letters, and please explain why you're coming back when you were before the committee in February, received numerous variances, had a condition you built it substantially in accordance with the plans, and now you're coming back for length and depth variances, which I think the neighbors aren't too happy with.
Yes, my name is Marin Zabzuni. I'm the agent for 68 ROYALAVON Crescent. I'm happy to explain. It's more of a technical variance we're here for.
Yep.
So we initially went for the last year for new home committee application hearing, received approval. The drawings we submitted previously, we had an excavated rear concrete deck. However, when we went for building permit, this was not counted as building length. It came as a variance during the permit process, even though we made no changes to the drawings. So the zoning examiner missed this variance in terms of adding the rear excavated concrete deck as part of the building length and depth. So the drawings before you, there's no changes to the previous application. It's just to count the rear concrete deck as is. This has zero impact to neighbors at all. The house does not change in building envelope, and it was a mistake on the zoning notice initially. And the owner is even requesting, if possible, to get some of the refunding for the second committee payment, because there's no changes to the plans or drawings.
Okay. And you know, it would have been, if you would explain that when you submitted your application, perhaps the neighbors, like what you're telling me is that what you're coming back for are these 2 variances, which are no different than what you came back to the committee with and got approval in 2020, including you were in fact directed to build it substantially in accordance with that. It was just that they missed identifying those 2 variances because it wasn't for the house, it was for the platform. Your neighbors,
yes.
Your neighbors wouldn't know about that, correct? They would just receive this and say, "Oh, they were in February. They got all these variances, and they're coming back for two new ones." But you're telling us,
I believe the owner has. Exactly,
You said it's
exactly. It was
exactly
just
the
more of a
same as
technical
what you s-
variance.
Yeah, it's exactly the same as what you
Yes,
submitted.
you
I
can
want the
even,
neighbors to hear this, but it was just missed as a
yes,
variance. Okay, so let's hear from the
that's
neighbors.
correct. And you can even compare.
Okay, does anyone have
Okay.
any questions for Mr. Zabzuni before we go to the neighbors? Mr. Taylor?
Yes, sir. Could you just confirm that these variances do not impact on the gross floor area or lot coverage approvals that you received in February?
I confirm that, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, or let's hear from the neighbors? And
So, Mr. Chairman, 88 Royal Avon Crescent will not be represented.
Okay.
And as far as there are several speakers that would have spoken for 70 Royal Avon, but Matt Medill will speak.
Okay.
And so the Christiaks will not.
Okay.
And everybody else, including the people on the following page, are Nicholas Tanchak is not present, but Mary Tanchak is.
Okay. So again, I guess all the neighbors can hear this and hear what the what Mr. Zabzuni has just explained, and which I was not aware of, and so I don't know if that changes their position on this. And in fact, what is before us, these two new variances are in fact not new variances, but were variances that are reflected in the plans that were approved and that the applicant is actually obliged to build in accordance with, as opposed to being something new that he's now added on at the last minute to make the house even bigger than what was approved last time. So having said that, let's hear from the most, the neighbor right next door, Matt Medill at 70 Royal Avon. Mr. Medill?
Hello. Yes, I'm here. I don't understand how this is not a new variance, as this deck has concrete walls on the side. It's a part of the house. This is an extension to the house. I don't see how this can't be considered part of the length of the house. If it was just a concrete deck out the back with nothing over top of it, then fine, but this is something that obstructs our view to the side. I'm looking at it out the window right now, by the way.
But sir, what
It's already been built.
Yeah, I understand. What we're saying is, what the applicant is saying, the agent rather, is that in fact that was shown on the plans and is part of what he, perhaps staff can check that, what was approved back in February. It was just missed and should have shown as a variance
right
at that time. So
But
they're already, it's not any bigger than what was approved back in February 2020 is what the applicant is saying. They just didn't identify the
problem-
variances.
Right. The problem is that if you misread the drawing and you believe that that's just an exterior deck, then the length of house that you calculate when you determine if you're going to approve the variances is incorrect. So you were approving based on incorrect information because the drawing was misread. And I don't understand why this was approved in the first place, as this is a neighborhood of 100-plus-year-old homes. This is,
we can't go back.
Frankly,
we can't go back to what was approved in February, sir, but we can look at, I originally thought this was two new variances. In fact, he's saying, and it looks like planning hasn't even weighed in.
yeah, I just don't see why it's approved to extend so far beyond the bylaw. Like, do these bylaws mean nothing? I'm just worried about the precedent that this sets for the neighborhood as well, as there's a rather small building on the other side of us that's on a corner. They're not going to have room to be doing this. So are they going to be approved to go 5 stories up? Like, I don't want this to set a precedent for massive oversized homes in this neighborhood.
Yeah, well, I guess every application is, in theory is considered on its merits as to where it is and what, but there are obviously people do come here and tell us, oh, this, there was approval for X, Y, and Z in terms of the numbers. This property was already approved and have just missed the length and depth, which we're told is based on the old plan.
Right, but that's
So
length and
anyway,
depth
the
that was
applicant will
considered
have
and
a
approved
chance
in
to
previous-
respond to your concerns. So does anyone have any questions then for Mr. Mr. Medill next door? Although, let me just, hold on a second. Just notice something here. The way that the variance is written, okay, there was an approval already for the length, but it was, I guess, it was, seems to be, you're telling me the applicant is that it was wrong because it didn't take into consideration the concrete piece when it should have. That's why it's gone up. Anyway, we understand your concern. We'll have the applicant respond. So the next neighbor speaking, I guess, is John Burke at 67 Royal Avon.
This is John.
Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. First of all, let me just say that the comments that have been made up so far by the agent strike me as being disingenuous. If we wouldn't be here, if this was built in accordance to the plans, it's not been built in accordance to the plans, okay? Secondly, let me just provide some context. I've built houses in the past. I built forms for footings, I poured footings, I built concrete walls. Back when we used, so I'm not unsympathetic to minor variances, but we use tape measures. Today we got laser levels, we got sophisticated electronic measuring equipment, and you're telling me that a variance, the length of a large SUV is something that's acceptable to this committee? That's outrageous. It's just outrageous. And it's not, by the way, it's not just an esoteric discussion about numbers. It's not that. It's also the visual of this on the street and the impact it has on the neighbors, Matt, who just spoke across the street, him, but other neighbors on Nora, and other neighbors in this neighborhood. And it's just architecturally, it just messes up the streetscape for one thing, okay? And it's not a minor variance. So my request that this structure be altered to back to the original dimensions, to be remediated and back to the original dimensions that were approved.
Yeah.
And any other decision is totally unacceptable to this neighborhood.
Okay. Mr. Burke, thank you. I just want staff to bring up, because this looks like it's the major issue. The applicant is telling us that what he was before.
But by the way, let me let me add one more thing.
Yep.
We're not just talking about we're talking about the length and the depth of this property.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
The agent just talked to one of those variances. He didn't talk to both of them.
Okay. So here's the situation. I guess we're being told by the applicant that this is exactly the same plan that was approved, but they just missed. Someone.
So why do you believe him?
Can I just say what I had to say, sir? Can you just hang on for a second? So
Sorry.
I'm just saying, you're telling us, the applicant is saying it's the same plan. The plan is not getting any bigger. This was what it was approved as far as the drawing. And in fact, the only problem is that the length and depth wasn't recognized as a variance because it was this deck type structure, concrete, whether it was covered or uncovered. They've now discovered that it has to be included. You're telling me that in fact you say you have experience reading plans and building houses, that in fact what they built or what they're seeking to legalize here is in fact something in addition to what was before the committee in February. That should be a very easy answer for staff to figure out by looking at that. Staff is shaking their head.
So, Mr. Chair, I have nothing on file that explains what happened, why they're back, or the nature of this omission. Or any
Sorry, we're getting some interference here and I can't concentrate. Can someone try, maybe one of the virtual members can try muting and see if that's the problem? Danny, can you try muting yourself?
Mr. Chairman, it's not the members, it's Mr. Burke. There's some background noise happening at Mr. Burke's location, which is interfering with us.
I will temporarily mute.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Burke. Ah, perfect. Okay.
Thank you.
So going back to staff,
I have no communications on file identifying why this application is back or the nature of any omission or mistake made. I'm at a loss to understand why they're back. This could have been addressed by way of a cover letter or an explanation with the submission of the file, but there is nothing on file that I can refer to provide the committee with guidance as to what happened.
Okay, because I'm looking at two different situations. One, the applicant saying, oh, this is the same thing. They just missed identifying the variance, but we're not building anything more than was approved and tied to the plan, in fact, back in February. And the neighbors, the two we've heard from so far, are telling me, no, this is a change, and they're doing something in addition to what was before the committee. So that should be something easy to figure out. If we can't figure it out now, and we should have a copy of the previous decision and the materials submitted, and especially since it was tied to the plan, if we can hold it down and do that, or we have to adjourn and do that.
Mr.
that is
Chair, can
something
I
that
make one?
First of all, who's?
Mr. Chair, can I make one? Can I make one more comment?
Is that Martin or John?
It's John Burke calling. Yeah. So, if the dimensions that were currently existent, if they had been used, then there's a chance this might not have been approved at all. Correct?
That is, yeah. If those variances were before the committee and before the neighborhood, perhaps that would have made it look even more. I can't go back in time and see what would have been or wouldn't have been in February 2020. But the first thing we have to understand is whether what you're telling us and Mr. Medill is the case, that it's actually bigger than what was contemplated and approved in February, or as the agent is telling us, it's exactly the same. They just missed, either them or the planning department or the plans reviewer missed the fact that that was a variance because of the issue. It wasn't part of the main house, it was part of a terrace or a deck or a covered deck. So that should be a pretty easy, that's the first thing we have to establish, I think. I don't know if anyone agrees with me. If in fact
Okay,
they are
but
coming
what
back with
about?
more.
Okay, you haven't addressed the overage on the frontage. He hasn't addressed it either. There's an overage in both directions, an overage of about 1.7 meters and an overage of about 3 point some odd meters. Why is the building wider than it's supposed to be by 1.7 meters?
Is that, I don't see, anyway, we'll let him respond to that, but I think the first thing we have to do is establish.
And by the way, let me add one more thing. There's not 2 objections, there's 3 documented objections.
There may be more. I'm just saying I've only heard from 2 of you so far.
Well, I go online and I can see 3 of them documented online. 3 online. When we initially started this conversation.
Mr. Burke, you're not listening to me. We're still in the middle of this. We've heard from 70, Mr. Medill. We've heard from you at 67. We still have to hear from the people at 3 Nor Road, 1 Nor Road, and 65 ROYALAVON. So just hang on. Okay? You've had your say. Let's see if there's any questions. We still have 3 other neighbors to hear from.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just be patient and listen to the other people. I didn't say there are only 2. I said we've only heard from 2 so far. So let's now hear from the good segue here from the neighbor at 3 Nora Road. Nicholas Tanchak.
Mr. Chair, just before we proceed, the previous decision, which the committee members have in their agenda packages, identifies that the 3rd condition was that the original application was tied to the February 6th, 2020 plans. So that's February 6th and stamp received. The plans that we have submitted with this application do have a different date of September 3rd, 2020. So they're not dated the same.
Are they the same plan though?
I have not done the overlay comparison, and to do it on the fly would be.
Yeah, well, that's the $64,000 question. Are we dealing with something new here? Or are we just and neighbors still seem to have concerns even if it was shown, but I think that's the first thing we have to establish. So should we adjourn this application? We still have 3 other neighbors to hear from. It's 10 to 1 and we're on item number 14. So I'm just saying, are we going to be able to find out the answer to that question?
I would propose that we defer this matter. It doesn't appear that we have the sufficient information to make a determination on the variance application as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Reddick. I think that's a very wise decision. We still haven't heard from the neighbors, but if it's a moot point, there's no point if we still have to determine that. So perhaps this matter should be adjourned. There's no hardship because I understand it's already built, hearing from the neighbors. So the fact that it's put off for a month or so shouldn't really hurt anyone. And at least we have the right information before us. So on the matter of deferral,
Could I, Danny Bellissimo here, I know there's been a lot of talk here, but some of my questions are not being answered because I haven't had a chance to ask the questions of the applicant. And it has to do with timing. I went to see this house. This house is already practically 90% built on the outside. And I'm confused, and I would like to ask an applicant some timing questions. Because I
sir,
think we need
Mr.
to get those
Bellissimo, if we're going to
questions
adjourn
answered
it, if you
before-
were going to
I
adjourn
think
this, there's
we
no
need to
point
have
doing
those
that.
questions. Can I finish my question?
No, you can't. Because I'm telling you,
Well,
we're in
then
the middle
please
of a
let me
motion to
speak.
adjourn. We're in the middle of
I
a
am
motion
talking
to
about the
adjourn.
motion. I
Does
am
the
addressing the
question have to
motion.
do, does the question have to do with the issue of adjournment?
Yes, it does.
What's the question?
The question of adjournment has to deal with the fact that I've seen this building, it's been built, and I'm confused about when these variances were identified as needing to come here. If it was through the building process, then why was the permit not stopped before he went ahead for a permit? I'm confused about when these variances were identified. And I think the residents have a chance, need to have those questions answered. And I would like to change the motion to include that we need a deferment. I support that, but with the details of timing of when the application went through for permit and when these variances were identified. And if they were identified before construction started. Thank you.
Well, it's been identified. I understand you're saying if it was identified before, then the applicant did something wrong as opposed to not. But it doesn't change the fact that we have to know what's before us and we're going to have to adjourn it. So rather than waste another 15 minutes getting questions to answers to questions that are not going to be able to have
can
us
I clarify
hear the
my
application
motion?
before, then if you're sitting at home, we're sitting here, we're going to be here till 8 o'clock at night. There's no point asking another series of questions if we're not going to be hearing the application before us.
I am
We
amending.
have a motion on the floor from Ms. Roddick to adjourn. Do I have a second
I would
for that
like to
motion?
amend the motion.
I'll second the motion.
I would like to amend the motion.
Too late. The motion has been adjourned. There's no need to have them tell us what the timing is. We'll find that out in due course. We have a seconder for the motion. Mr. Taylor has seconded Ms. Roddick's motion. And all in favor? Opposed? Mr. DeMilliso, just for the record, are you opposed to the deferral or not? He's not answering. Okay, the motion carries. The matter is deferred. We'll see you all back here again once we get some answers to these questions. Okay, we'll move on to item number 15.
Yes, hello, I'm Angus Skeen. I'm the agent for this application.
Welcome. This is an application to construct a new detached dwelling with an attached garage. There are 3 variances. We have revised plans and a waiver. We have the Long Branch guidelines. We have supporting materials as well, and we have neighbors and supports. So.
If I could make it clear, we're actually not here on a waiver. Through the graces of city staff, I've actually got the official revised zoning review in front of you. So we're confident in the variances.
Right, okay, we have a revised zoning notice January 11th and a revised plan. So that, and that I believe is in response to concerns from planning, correct? So.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so we have support, no letters of opposition. We have no urban forestry, so let's just see if committee members have any questions for you. No questions, so let's see if someone's ready to make a motion.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I find the variances requested and set out in the revised notice to be in keeping with the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I move for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We have a seconder for Mr. Taylor's motion.
Danny Bellissimo seconds the motion.
Okay, all in favor? You have unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Skeen.
Thank you.
Okay, we have two more applications for the morning session. Next application is item number 16, 9 Beechwood. We have registered to speak on this application Tomas Goral, the agent, as well as the neighbor next door at 11 Beechwood. And this is an application to construct a new duplex with an attached garage. There are 10 variances, including a FSI of 1.27. We have a revised zoning, and planning is recommending we have urban forestry conditions, we have transportation conditions of approval, and we have opposition from two neighbors at 12 Gray and another address I can't read here. So is Mr. Goral there?
Yes, good afternoon, Chair and committee members.
So we do have a neighbor here with opposition. We do have your presentation that you've given us with your overheads and your photos, which I assume all the members have reviewed. Is there anything you'd like to add? I don't know if we need a full-fledged presentation, or we can just hear what the concerns are of the neighbor next door.
I can give a presentation, or we can hear what they have to say, and I can comment on each
Would you like
point.
a presentation on this?
No.
No? Okay. So let's go to the neighbors, sir, and hear what their concerns are.
Good.
Is Sherry Ann Dean or Carlo Page there?
Mr. Chairman, Sherry was on WebEx, but again, I have a million new call-in users who I will unmute all of them just to see whether they are Sherry. Is Sherry Ann Dean there, please?
Okay, actually, I'd like to go back to the applicant first for a second.
Okay.
I just noticed that the committee has received a planning memo, or planning staff is recommending these changes to be made, I believe, and that's why you have revised. These changes have been incorporated into the plans before us?
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that on the record. So we can't reach Sherry Ann Dean or Carlo Page, or?
We cannot, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Goral, do you happen to have any idea? Was there any communication with the neighbors? Do you know what their concerns are, if any?
No, none. The only one that I know is the one that was posted. They were concerned about privacy.
Yeah.
So I'm only aware of one objection, and there was one letter of support posted online.
Yeah, we have the support letter for sure. The letter is from 12 Gray, so that's not the same.
I believe that's the property right behind the property.
Yeah, we have that letter.
Yeah. But I wasn't aware that there was a second objection.
Yeah, the other one was a support, right? The other letter.
Also, from 12 grade, those are the individuals that are called in?
Yeah. Now, this is someone who just called in but didn't write a letter.
Oh, okay.
Right next door to 11. So they are no longer with us?
Mr. Chairman, they are no longer with us. I don't know where they went.
Okay. Okay, so we have the applicant has incorporated plannings and has given us revised plans to incorporate their concerns. We do have urban forestry conditions 2, 3, and 5. So committee members, any questions, or is someone ready for a motion?
Just sorry, I'm having trouble finding the I guess revised notice that shows how planning's problems with 3 of these variances has been changed. I just want to make sure if
I guess it should be, Mr. Taylor, in the revised plans.
It's in the revised plans and the revised notice, which was posted on January 15th.
Yeah, it's in my plans here, and under revised plans on the bookmarks, it shows it's revised at 8:27 a.m. January 15th.
Yeah.
And you're saying that incorporates what the 3 changes that
The 2 changes, correct.
Yeah. 3.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'm satisfied that the variances requested meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act. And I recommend approval subject to urban forestry conditions 2 and 3 and the Transportation Services Division conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Seconder for Mr. Taylor's motion.
Sophia Reddick, just to clarify, should we be tying this to the revised plan?
Is that a friendly amendment request that the
Yes,
you build substantially?
it's a friendly request.
Oh, sure. I'm good with that.
Then I'm prepared to second the motion.
Okay, seconded with the amendment that it be built substantially in accordance with, is it that plan that we were told, the January 15th plan? Right, okay, thank you. All in favor? Unanimous approval. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, our last application of the morning is item number 1725 William Street. And I believe, before we go into a great introduction on this, I believe that Mr. Benkowski, the agent, when we had our call in this morning, was telling us he's going to be asking for a deferral. So this was for a new detached dwelling with attached garage with 4 variances. And this is one where planning was, again, this is an interesting one again, where planning is refusing a variance, which would, without having a revised variance, or reduced variance, but just a complete refusal. There's no way they could build anything. So again, this is another one of those planning reports where rather than refusing the entire thing, they're just refusing, picking and choosing what they want refused, which to me doesn't make any sense. Mr. Benkowski?
Yes.
You mentioned earlier this morning, several hours ago, when you were being we were doing our sound checks, that you're going to be asking for a deferral.
Yes, I will be asking for a deferral, but just to address the planning memo, even my reason for deferral is not to address the planning memo, by the way. It is to address the concerns of forestry. I am not of the opinion that the crabapple tree will be affected, but I do understand the veracity of the West District Forestry and dealing with trees and subsequently appealing based upon trees. So I would rather get them a report. I have filed a revised zoning notice, a zoning waiver, as well as revised architectural plans, eliminating some variances and altering the associated FSI and coverage as a result of removing the building length variance. So I will be proceeding with those at a later date, but I will be requesting a deferral to address the comments of forestry and not addressing the comments of planning, if that makes some sense to you.
Okay, but would you agree with me, sir, as an experienced planner, if you're allowed 0.4 times coverage and you're looking to go to 0.82 and planning recommends refusal of that variance, that the rest of the application, the other 3 variances, or whether there's 3 or 10 variances, are a moot point because you couldn't build without any, your house may even be over already 4 times coverage, FSI.
Not only would it not be buildable, you would end up with a house maybe 10 foot wide by 30 foot. It would be completely unlivable. I am not sure why planning does that.
Yeah,
to be honest, West District is really the only one that does do that consistently.
Yes.
So I do agree that recommending refusal of one, especially being a related FSI, really kills the project, whereas a height or other things you could play around with. But in terms of an FSI, you're done right there as soon as that FSI is.
Thank you for confirming that. So basically, I'm going to be sending a directive to community planning that they consider the effect of refusing one variance rather than the whole application in these circumstances, because if the committee followed their result, they would have some out of context small variances for length and height or other things which were completely not tied to a plan. So we
and ultimately you would end up at the key lab either way.
Yeah.
Really, you'd end up at the key lab either way, which really isn't in the public interest at all.
For sure. Okay, thank you, Mr. Benkowski. So on the matter of deferral, and I guess we do have neighbors on the phone on this application as well.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. We have 2 neighbors here, both listed they're present.
Yes, okay, so we perhaps have to weigh in with them before we have the motion. Kevin Ty?
Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
Mr. Ty, I see you're the neighbor at
Yeah.
97 John Street.
Yes, I am. I
Okay.
just wanted to say that I do support this motion. If they are like for the amount of floor space is about 0.4 times the area of the lot. The actual residence will be basically unlivable, and you might have like a shotgun house, and you won't have enough space for a kitchen.
So
In
hold on,
terms of the
you're in,
length
so you're in
of,
support? Sorry, sir. You're in support of the
I
application?
am in support.
Okay, but right now
I
we
am
just,
in support of the application.
okay, but we're not listening, we're not dealing with the substantive merits. Mr. Benkowski has asked for a deferral, so I just want to know if you're okay with this matter being deferred.
Oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. You'll have a chance to weigh in when this matter comes back before the committee. David Curry at 2 Wadsworth Boulevard. Good afternoon.
Yeah, Mr. Curry is unmuted.
Hi, Mr. Curry.
Hello, committee. Hi.
I'm calling, I don't know if have objections or concerns or in support of this application, but Mr. Benkowski, the agent, has asked for a deferral. So I don't want to hear from the merits, just on the matter of whether you feel you are in favor of the deferral, and sorry for having to stay on the line all morning.
What are the options?
Yeah, no problem. Long morning. More time to consult with the De Silvas.
Yes.
And Mr. Benkowski would be beneficial to our privacy issues. We are okay with the deferral.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, committee, so we have a request for deferral. The neighbors are in favor. Can I have a motion, please?
No, we are not. That's all.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to move for deferral to enable the agent to negotiate with urban forestry. But I would also add that the purpose of the deferral will be to enable the applicant to deal with community planning and neighborhood issues, particularly with respect to floor space index. I don't think it would be helpful to him to ignore those concerns and come back here merely having resolved the concerns of urban forestry.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Seconded for Mr. Taylor's motion, please.
I'm prepared to second the motion.
All in favor? Matter has been deferred. Thank you, Mr. Benkowski. Thank you, neighbors. We stand
Thank
adjourned.
you.
It's now 10 after 1, and we stand adjourned, having finished the morning session. Yeah.
What time are we coming back? Hi, can you clarify what time we're coming back?
I am, hello everybody in the afternoon session. The chairman had indicated that we will begin the 1 o'clock session at 2 o'clock. I am going to begin sound checking you guys now. That's fine. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to proceed with the sound check. If you are still lingering from the morning session and you have nothing to actually add to the afternoon session, can you please leave the WebEx application? Thank you. Andrea Chang. Andrea Chang. Is there an Andrea Chang on the WebEx application?